Good evening, everybody. Thanks for tuning in to WXI 12 News' Facebook Live here. It is Super Tuesday. We've got the primary election, and we have a couple of political veterans here, familiar faces to WXI 12 viewers over the years. We have, of course, Bill O'Neill, our chief political reporter. He's been covering elections since before Facebook existed. And we have John Dinan, Wake Forest political science professor, who's been teaching about politics since before Facebook existed. Great to talk politics with both of you. We're going to do a few of these as we wait for the numbers to trickle in before we begin our regular broadcast tonight at 10 on the Triad CW and 11 right here on WXII. Bill, let me start with you. You spoke with many of the candidates who appeared on the ballot today. The polls are now closed. If you're a candidate, knowing that the results are going to take a little bit longer than usual to come in, I guess it maybe depends on the race, but put me in the seat of where the candidate is right now. Are you nervous? Are you anxious? Are you glad it's over?
You know, John and I were just talking about the fact that there's not a lot of intrigue tonight. We know what's going to happen in the governor's race. We suspect we know. And as far as the 6th congressional, John and I were talking about, we think that's one that we just don't have a great handle on. Now, if you're Mark Walker and you've been there before, I don't know, maybe you're sweating a little bit less because you know what's going on. But there's a couple of young guys in that race. Bo Hines, Addison McDowell. These guys are like 30 years of age, don't have as much experience. They've got to be feeling, I would imagine, a little bit of anxiety tonight. Christian Castelli has been here before. He's another Green Beret. I think he's faced a few tougher things than what's going on tonight. So what is going on in that race, I think, makes it easier for the veterans, maybe tougher for the newcomers. What do you think, John? Is that true or not?
Well, there's also just a sense of they've left it all out in the field today. I mean, these candidates would have been out there, still canvassing, still meeting and greeting folks, and this follows months of campaigning. So I think there's in some sense of, I've done what I can do at this point, let me relax. I can't do anything more to influence the vote in that sense.
And John, one of the unique things about the setup of this primary election, it's almost a reverse pyramid in a way. The most compelling and competitive races are not at the top of the ballot, and we may see that play out in terms of less interest and lower voter turnout.
That's right. There's at the presidential level, we don't expect that to be all that competitive tonight. At the gubernatorial level, in other parts, we don't expect that to be as competitive. But at the congressional level, there are some really competitive races, several of them right here in the Triad area, another one up in the kind of northeastern part of the state, up in the Virginia border, and another one over in the Raleigh area as well. So, and as well, another one down the Charlotte area. So we have a handful of congressional races where there's intense interest. What's interesting, as you say, is that come November, very few of those congressional races are likely to be very competitive. And that presidential race, that gubernatorial race, that attorney general race, those become competitive. So very much the reverse from March to November.
And Bill, if this governor's race goes the way that the polls and the fundraising and everything else and the endorsements would lead us to believe they will go, you said earlier today this may be the #1 gubernatorial general election race in all of America.
And I think that's a safe bet to make.
Wow.
Mark Robinson has become a national figure. Now, I think that folks here in North Carolina view Mr. Stein as a little left. They view Mr. Robinson as a little right. I think we're going to see those two clash in a very, very public national fight. I think there's going to be tons of money coming in from all over the country for that race, and attack ads that'll fill our TV station for months to come. So I don't think anyone would argue the fact that that's going to be such a colorful race. And I hope that Mark Robinson becomes more accessible to the media. We have not had much of a chance to talk with him, and I think that the voters would like to hear more from him personally, one-on-one. You know, what is it that's on his mind? Because you hear a lot of things about him. He's had a lot of problems on social media and things of that nature. I think that at some point in time, he's going to have to come out and talk to people, be more accessible. At least I'm hopeful for that at any rate.
And the one thing about governor's races is those can be independent of how people vote in presidential elections.
Yeah.
So many other elections that we're going to go to the ballot box in November are going to depend on how the two candidates are doing at the top of the ticket, and it's just going to filter on down in that sense. Your fate as a congressional candidate, as a state legislative candidate, is just so heavily dependent on who does well at the top of the ticket, except for governor's races and to some extent attorneys general races as well. Those can be taken independently. So you could see folks going out there and voting a split ticket, in short.
Sure.
I'm willing to vote for a Democrat for president and a Republican for governor, or vice versa. So that's what makes these governor's races and attorney general races, which we haven't yet focused on, really interesting.
Memory serves, 8 years ago, Roy Cooper was one of the few Democrats in all of North Carolina who had any reason to be optimistic after that first night. And it took a few weeks before that race was finally called against former Mayor of Charlotte, Pat McCrory. So we've got, I want to get both of your take here. I'm going to put you on the spot. We've got legalized sports gambling beginning on Monday in North Carolina. So over under number of runoffs that we have. We'll set the over under at a half. So are we going to see at least one runoff, or are we going to see fewer than that, do you think? Out of everything that's on the ballot here in the Piedmont Triad, will we see a runoff?
I think we see a runoff. Do you?
I do. I'll take the over on that.
Okay.
I wouldn't be surprised if we do. It'd be very difficult for a lieutenant governor's race that has that many candidates on the Republican side. It'd be really tough for one candidate to get to 30%. And then you look at this 13th congressional district race, again with double-digit number of candidates over in the Raleigh area. It'd be really hard for either of those to avoid going to runoff. And we haven't even started talking about the 6th congressional district in the Triad. So I'll take the over on that, in keeping with the new sports betting.
And there's also the 10th congressional. They have 5 candidates in that race. Now there are a couple of favorites there, but still, can one of them pull 30? I don't know.
Yeah. And again, that is the key rule, is North Carolina now requires 30% threshold for someone to clear that. We used to be at a 40% threshold.
Not that long ago.
And now we're down to 30%, so it's a little bit easier to clear that threshold, and yet still you have such crowded fields as we have in some of these. All of it we're talking about on the Republican side, which should be clear. There are some really crowded fields on the Republican side this year, less crowded on the Democratic side. I would take the expectation of we'll at least see 1, perhaps 2, or even 3 runoffs.
Wow, 3.
Oh, wouldn't rule it out.
I should have set the over under higher if we're talking about maybe 3. With so much name recognition in this lieutenant governor's race, how does anyone who is maybe in that upper echelon of, okay, I've heard of Jim O'Neill, I've heard of Sam Page, I've heard of et cetera, how do they distinguish themselves from one
We
another?
were just talking about that. We think that is such a difficult race to call. Because you say Jim O'Neill. Well, Jim O'Neill is known in Forsyth County. He's not known in Charlotte. He's not known in Raleigh. So the problems that they all face is they all have a little bit of a niche somewhere.
Regional.
But very regional. Sam Page is very well known in the Triad,
Right.
but he's not well known throughout the rest of the state. So I think all of them face the same problem about that name recognition is really regional, and how do I capitalize on that? And that's why John and I were talking, we have no idea who's going to win that race.
Yeah. When we break down for the kind of color-coded county map later on tonight, eventually, for who in the lieutenant governor's primary, who wins things, we're going to see a lot of colors on that. We're going to see it very regionally divided. Some folks out in the mountains are going to kind of, Deanna Ballard probably kind of does well out there. We have various candidates in the Triad, they're probably going to do well there, and some other candidates are going to do well around Charlotte or Raleigh with their bases. It's really regionally focused. The key is there's not a huge amount of policy difference between a number of those candidates. You've got to really stretch to find out, well, there's a little bit of difference here. So a lot of it's name recognition, and a lot of it's regional-based name recognition.
In terms of the big picture for North Carolina, 2 years ago we had this massive U.S. Senate race where Ted Budd defeated Sherry Beasley, but you could argue in terms of the way in which North Carolina was shaped or reshaped, what happened with the state Supreme Court, and the immediate fallout after that was more influential than 1 out of 100 votes in Washington, D.C. in the upper chamber. We're here at another, I think you could argue, pivotal point when it comes to the Council of State. Roy Cooper can't run again. Mark Robinson will not be the lieutenant governor. Will he be the governor? We don't know that. And Josh Stein will not be the attorney general anymore. Will he be governor? We don't know. So the top 3 positions on the Council of State, and at least 5 because of other people who aren't running or are running for something else. The Council of State is going to look dramatically different, isn't it?
Very much so. And John and I were just talking about the AG's race. We think that is going to be one heck of a race. Dan Bishop is, unopposed, so he has no problems getting in there. I don't know what's going to happen with Jeff Jackson and what is it, Santana DeBerry, the lady that's used the DA down in Durham, Orange County. I have no idea what's going to happen in that race. And the fact that Republicans have poured money into that race in support of Ms. DeBerry, it just makes us mind-boggling to figure out what's happening.
And these council of state races are important for their own sake. Who's the labor commissioner, who's the auditor, but they're also important because they're stepping grounds for later office in that sense. You get a foothold there, you become labor commissioner, you become secretary of state, people immediately start saying, are you going to run for other statewide office? So they're important in their own right, they're also important for what happens 4 and 8 years from now.
I asked all the lieutenant governor candidates that. I said, where are you going? And none of them would say, oh no, this is it. I said, nobody's running for lieutenant governor to be lieutenant governor. What's your next step? And nobody would answer that question.
And just to be completely clear, Satana DeBerry is her name. She's the district
Say that
attorney
first
in
name?
Durham County. Satana.
Satanic.
Satana DeBerry.
Satana.
Yeah, Satana
Satana.
DeBerry, and she and Jeff Jackson, along with Tim Dunn, a former Marine and Fayetteville attorney, are the 3 Democrats in the race, and the winner will take on, as you mentioned, former Congressman Dan Bishop.
He's still
a congressman.
yeah, he's still in Congress.
Sure. But will be former soon and unopposed. Let's talk about Raleigh now, and not necessarily the Council of State. That's another way in which we've seen seismic change, with the state getting that critical for Republicans veto-proof majority, the supermajority in both houses. They don't have a supermajority by a lot. In fact, they have it by the bare minimum. It's exactly 60% of seats in the state house and the state legislature. Are we going to know anything based on how things go tonight if Democrats have a chance of chipping away? They just need 1 net seat in either house and the majority goes away, right?
Well, and it's not really 1 seat, though. If you've watched some of the complaints, we have a local person here out of High Point, Cecil Brockman. Cecil Brockman is a Democrat, and he's voted with Republicans. He's being primaried by the former, I think he's the former head of the NAACP. But the Republicans have been supporting him. Tim Moore has a super PAC that has been helping Mr. Brockman in his campaign. Wow. So there are a couple of Democrats in Raleigh that have been voting with Republicans. So you can't say it's just 1 vote. It's more than 1. You're right, it's close, but it's more than 1.
On paper, it's 1, but the net might need to be 3 or 4.
Yeah.
And that's where I was going to go with this. What we will know tonight, at the end of the night, is whether some of these Democrats who have gone over and voted with Republicans, Cecil Brockman, Michael Ray, over in another area, they are being primaried by progressive folks who said, we don't want you working with Republicans. So what we will know tonight is whether or not those primaries are successful. And that has effects down the road, because other Democrats watch this and say, there's always the ability, let me work with Republicans on the budget. I'll get some things for my district and I'll benefit from this in that sense. It's good for my district for me to do this. But if they're primaried after working with Republicans, that suggests going forward that's not a road to take. So I don't know that we'll know whether the supermajority is going to survive or not after tonight, but we will know on the Democratic side, and to some extent on the Republican side, whether or not some kind of forces that are either more conservative on the Republican side or more liberal on the Democratic side are able to take out and defeat some of their own members of the party.
Wrap up the Facebook Live. This one here, we're going to do another one before the night is out. John, your take, big picture here. Is Nikki Haley still a Republican presidential candidate 24 hours from now?
She has sent a lot of signals. She initially said, I'm in it for the long haul. She began to temper those signals in the last few days, saying I'm in at least until Super Tuesday. Some of the other steps and the signals that she's sent has sent it perhaps late tonight, perhaps tomorrow. It would not be a surprise to political observers if she says, I'm now suspending my campaign.
And then we would be left with former President Trump as not just the de facto or the presumed, he would essentially be all but unofficial, the nominee at that point. All right, great. Well, hey, I appreciate it. And we'll thank you for checking us out here on Facebook. We're going to hear from Bill and John throughout the evening, again on Facebook Live at 10 o'clock on the Triad CW, and then at 11 on WXII. Hopefully for this next one, we'll actually have some results that we can start to look at.
Nice.
We'll see how that goes. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you again here on Facebook in just a little bit.